Okay, so this is the second episode of Eliminating Caregiver Chaos podcast. And we want to welcome you if you're listening in. We know this is brand new. It's going to take time for people to tune in. But we're just happy to do this because I really think there's just a lack of resources out there for caregivers. Caregivers are trying to figure out what to do, how to do it, how they're supposed to respond to the challenges that they're facing. And so we want to make this opportunity so that we can talk to you about caregiving and everything that's a part of that. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk specifically about the emotions caregivers carry. And this is such an important topic because it's rarely talked about, and it's rare that caregivers address their emotions. Okay, it's caregivers are used to going on their daily tasks. You have your routines that you do. You got to make meals. You got to take care of medications. You have to bathe and change your loved one. You have to also take care of the household. And so caregivers get so bogged down in the day-to-day tasks of caregiving that very little room is given to the emotions that are taking place. And so let me just say this, that it's the emotions that caregivers carry that lead to burnout. Okay, look, caregiving, there's going to be tasks to do. There's going to be the physical things. There's going to be the hands-on things that you have to take care of. And that's fine. Every job has those physical things. But what compounds the caregiving journey, what really stresses the caregivers out to the point of burnout is that there's emotions on top of that. Okay, you're dealing with people that you care about, people that you love. And so not only are there the physical tasks, but then there's the stress of all the emotions, things like anger, things like sadness, guilt, loss, grief, resentment, anger, hurt. All of those emotions are there, and it's those emotions that compound what we do as caregivers. When you go to a job, when you say you work at a desk, when I was a hospice administrator, I would go into the office every day and I would work at a computer for the most part. Then, work in groups, work with the staff. And, there was really no emotional connection. It was a job to do. Most of the time when you're behind a computer, it's a job that requires little emotional capacity. Caregiving is totally different. Caregiving, you are taking care of someone you love. Even if you're a professional caregiver or a field staff member of a hospice company, you're out in the field and you're interacting with people. People you come to care about, people you come to love, and so watching them go through this painful journey is emotionally taxing. And it's those emotions that weigh us down and that cause us the stress and burnout. But hardly ever is emotions ever talked about. And why is that? Well, dealing with emotions is like a forgotten art. It's like, it's something that most societies can't really get into unless they are a society of lots of freedom, lots of time. And what do I mean by that? Let me just give you an example. My father, who passed away in 2015, he was one of 13 brothers and sisters. Okay, and so when he was really young, he was right in the middle of the family. So there were brothers and sisters older, brothers and sisters younger. And, when he was young, from a very young age, he was put to work. It was at a time and age when families had a lot of kids because not only is it, continuing your bloodline, but they're also workers. My father and his brothers and sisters worked out in the cotton fields. They went out and worked. They were laborers, and they helped bring in money to the family. And so from sun up to sundown, they would be out in the fields, and they had very little time for emotions. Okay, very little time to, cry together, laugh together, celebrate together. I'm sure they had family gatherings, but the emotional part just was absent from my father's life. And so think about it. Where did you learn how to deal with your emotions? I mean, we didn't learn about this in school, right? We didn't, have a class on how to deal with your emotions. So most of us learned how to deal with our emotions by what was exemplified to us, the demonstration of what we saw from our parents and our family members. And so you can imagine that my father and my mother, to some extent, grew up in this generation where emotions were hardly met. Okay, like you might have been raised in a household that said, "Don't cry." Okay, crying is a weakness. I remember being told growing up, if you're going to cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about, or pull your boots up by the bootstraps and keep moving, wipe away those tears. And so many people from a very early age either did not address emotions at all or were taught to suppress the emotions. Okay, and that's fine and dandy. It gets you along for a while until those emotions automatically start pouring out, like in caregiving. Let me tell you how this affected me, how my father's emotional or lack of emotional intelligence affected me. And when I say lack of emotional intelligence, I don't say that in a demeaning way. I'm not trying to belittle him. Okay, this is life. This is what was dealt to him. And so the way it affected me is I grew up being emotionally neglected, and I didn't know. So what do I mean by that? And again, I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that I missed out on having a lot of my emotions and my emotional needs met. I missed out. When I was at my saddest points in my childhood, growing up, I didn't turn to my parents. Okay, maybe if I had like a scraped knee or something or was in pain, I would go to my mom and she would bandage me up. But when I was at my saddest emotionally, when I broke up with a girlfriend or someone hurt me emotionally, I didn't go to them. I remember just going off by myself into my bedroom and maybe crying by myself in bed. And at the same time, when I was at my happiest, when I did something really successful, I would, again, go off by myself and celebrate. And I didn't realize until I was in my 20s when I received counseling and was trained emotionally for ministry. I was trained how to help individuals with their emotions. I didn't realize how much I missed out on someone coming alongside me when I was sad and giving me comfort. And I didn't realize that until I got married. And, when I'm sad, I really don't need a lot of comfort around me, or at least I don't think I do because of the way I was raised. But my wife was completely different. My wife needed comfort when she was sad. It was expected of me, but I was never shown how. I never learned how. And so you can imagine the conflict that caused in my marriage when my wife needs comfort and I don't know how to give it because I never received it. And so I remember going to counseling one time and I was so emotionally unintelligent, so ignorant about emotions that they physically grabbed my arm, put it around her and said, "That is what comfort looks like." And so, not all of us are geared toward emotion. I told you about when I was at my happiest, when growing up, when I accomplished something really great. I remember that I was, I did some really great accomplishments. I got my Eagle Scout at a young age. I made a drum major of my high school marching band. And I mean, these were all big deals for me. And I remember like when I made drum major, this was a big deal, 300 member marching band in high school in Houston, Texas. And I remember coming home and just saying, I made drum major. And they're like, good job. No going out to eat, no celebrating, no party, just good job. And see, I was raised in a household where accomplishing things was what you were supposed to do. I was taught to be a leader. And so, of course, you're going to do good things. And that's just what's expected. I remember when I got my Eagle Scout award, my rank in Boy Scouts. I had just gotten my Eagle Scout. I passed my board review, and I had to plan my own ceremony, my own award ceremony for this great accomplishment. And I remember sitting there, I was at a little computer trying to type up a script of some type for a ceremony. And it saddens me a little bit thinking about it, but I had to plan my own court of honor, my own celebration. And this happened other times in my life when I accomplished really great things. When I became ordained as a minister, I had to plan my own ordination ceremony. And so there was a lack of this celebration growing up. And so now, 10 years later, I'm married, in counseling, and celebration was a huge thing for my wife. She had a special plate for birthdays. They like decorating for Christmas, putting the tree at lights. Celebration was just not that big of a deal for me, but it was a big deal for my wife. And so I just didn't know how. It was never showed to me. And so I had to learn to celebrate and even celebrate with other people. I mean, I remember being so awkward that somebody would tell me something great, like DJ, nice tie. And I remember this because I was preparing for a debate tournament. And I was wearing a tie, and one of my directors came up and said, "That's a very nice tie." And I didn't know what to say. And he looked at me and said, "Just say thank you." And yeah, that made sense. When someone compliments you, say thank you. Even little celebrations like that were very difficult for me. And so now think about caregiving. Maybe you are caring for your parent and you never really shared emotions. You never expressed emotions. Some people never really say, I love you. Some people never had a hug from their parents. Somebody never had someone to wipe away their tears when they were sad. And then all of a sudden you're thrust into caring for your loved ones, your parents, maybe a sibling, and a thrust of emotions just comes out. Inside you, there's anger. There's like this feeling of injustice that now you have to take care of them. You feel like you're shorted in life. You have sadness, you have grief because things with your loved one aren't going to be the way they used to be. It's these emotions that cause the burnout. And I will argue that even more so than all the physical things that you have to do. You can hire folks, I know some people don't have the finances, but hiring folks to do the physical things is an option, but those emotions are still there. And even though you're not physically caring for your loved one, you still might have all these emotions piled inside. And so it's very important that when you're on your caregiving journey, that we realize that caregiving is more than just all the physical things that you're dealing with. It's more than the medication management, more than the daily routines, cooking, cleaning, and all those things. There's an emotional toll that is taking place also. And so you're dealing with fear, guilt, resentment, shame, and then on top of that, loneliness. Okay, many people are doing this alone because it's very emotional, and a lot of people do not know how to deal with other people's emotions. Okay, and again, not blaming anybody. This isn't anyone's fault. I mean, and think about it. You want to get in shape physically. What do? You go to the gym and work out. You might even hire a personal trainer. But if you dare go get counseling, people think that there's something wrong with you, that you're broken. And that's just simply not the case. We need to be trained. That's why I like calling like counseling or emotional counseling, even with our caregivers or grief support. I like calling it training because that's exactly what it is. It's training. And just like working out or playing, like say you want to get good at basketball, it takes practice. Okay. Dealing with your emotions is a practice. Okay, you're not going to get it perfect. It's not a one-time and done thing. Let's say you go to counseling and you feel like, oh, I should be fixed now. It doesn't happen that way. It's a continual practice. That's one of the interesting things about yoga, by the way. Yoga is one of the things I love about it, and I don't know that much about yoga, but I know that it's a practice. You're not competing against everyone else in the room. You're doing what you're doing as a practice for yourself. And the aim is to get better, to get stronger, to get more flexible. And it's the same way with emotions. You're not competing against anyone. Okay? If you need to go to counseling and get help, think of it as training. Okay? Everyone needs help. When I find myself and full of emotions, I need help. We all need a third person. So thinking we can do this on our own, thinking that we don't need anyone's help it's a real drawback to what we're dealing with emotionally. And so this is why, by the way, like many times as a caregiver, you're going to hear the suggestion, practice more self-care. Go for a walk, take a nice hot bath, go work out at the gym. When you tell caregivers this, many times the results are going to be very short-lived, and people just don't have the motivation because they're already at capacity emotionally. And all those things are great things. It's great to take a walk. It's great to take a bath, and it does soothe our bodies. It does soothe our emotions, but underneath, those emotions are still there. We're still grieving, okay? Taking a hot bath doesn't make the grief go away, okay? It makes us feel better, but the grief is still there. When we go for a long walk, when we get back, all these emotional things that we're going through are still there. It's like, it's a nice temporary escape, but all the emotional things are still there. Now, I sincerely believe self-care is very important, given the right context. When you have the emotional capacity, when you're able to deal with your emotions, then self-care is a great tool to help metabolize all that stress through your body. Okay, and so many times, as caregivers, we tell ourselves we got so many things to do. I don't have time to really think about our emotions. I don't have time to really process them. Well, that's only adding to the burnout, all the caregiver burnout. And see, what happens in caregiving, on our caregiving journey, is everyone sees only the tip of the iceberg. They see, you struggling. They hear about, the anger you have. You say you can't sleep at night. You have headaches. You have stress aches all through your body. You're practicing bad habits like unhealthy eating because we're trying to find comfort foods to soothe our emotions through food, and that's what people see. But what they don't see is underneath the iceberg, what's underneath the water, which is a well full of a variety of emotions like guilt, anger, sadness, grief, loss, loneliness. Okay, look, caregiving is hard enough as it is physically. It's already physically demanding. But on top of that, there is a lot of emotions going on. And this is why I really think Eliminating Caregiver Chaos is so different than other caregiving programs. Sure, we help you logistically. We have a little course on planning. We have like little mini courses on how to deal with guilt, how to deal with worry and anxiety. But what sets us apart is the focus on all these emotions. We're going to teach you about self-care. We're going to teach you about how to take care of yourselves physically. We have a grief support program. All of that is great, but what is underneath all caregivers are these emotions. And it gives me a great honor and privilege to be able to come alongside caregivers and help them with that. Because I'm willing to bet if we can lower your emotional stress, then I believe those caregiver symptoms, those burnout symptoms will go down. The headaches will start going away. The depression will start subsiding. The uncontrollable shakiness from anxiety and worry will go away once we're able to effectively manage our emotions. And so I just wanted to come on here, talk a little bit about the emotions that caregivers have and how that it's so often neglected. And I don't know what you're going through. I don't know, if you're carrying guilt, anger, resentment, maybe for, friends and family who just seem to have stopped calling all of a sudden. Now that you're busy caregiving, they don't want to lend a hand. You have brothers and sisters that love giving you advice, but are nowhere to be found. Look, that is emotional turmoil. That is emotional stress. And as caregivers, we have to learn how to deal with this. And that's what makes Eliminating Caregiver Chaos so different. Anyway, that's the podcast for today. In the future, I'll go on a little bit more in depth on what we can do about all these emotions. We'll talk about how to cope with those emotions, how to deal with it. And let me tell you, suppressing it, ignoring it, doesn't make it go away. It's still there, except now you really don't know why you're so angry. You really don't know why you feel so tense in your body. It's because we shoved it aside and we don't even acknowledge it. And that may help us survive for a while, but in the long run, it's going to have a toll on us. And that's why we see so many caregivers being stressed to the point where they're losing their health. And I got stories upon stories about that. And so I hope this gives you a little bit of insight on the emotions caregivers are going through. And we'll see you next time on the Eliminating Caregiver Chaos podcast. Until then, take care of yourselves. If you want to contact me, please feel free to do it. I'm willing to, even if it's just to get some symptoms under control, some burnout symptoms under control, I'm here. If you want to work with me on a more consistent basis, we do have a coaching program. We do have a coaching membership that's very affordable, that has videos and instruction, just like you heard today. And we have actually 3 programs in there right now, 3 mini courses, and every month it's growing more and more. We have a caregiver planning mini course called the Caregiver Roadmap. If you're just starting out, or no matter where you are in your caregiving journey, the roadmap for planning is a great help. It helps get things under control that you can control. We have a mini course on how to deal with worry and anxiety, and we have a mini course on how to process your emotions. It's a quick 10-minute little system that we set up to help process emotions. And very soon, as of today, it's July 19th. Very soon, we're going to have a mini course on what to do with guilt. Guilt's a big problem and then after that, we have a grief process in the works. And so we hope that this was helpful today. Just explain a little bit why we're so stressed out all the time. And all this stuff I talked about today isn't just about caregiving. It's about life. Maybe you're listening to this and you're just, you're not in a caregiving situation. Maybe you're in a parenting role, or maybe you just know that you haven't processed your emotions. These techniques and on all the mini courses we have are for life. And so we will get along a lot farther. We'll be a lot healthier mentally and emotionally if we learn how to process our emotions. So, okay, 3 times now that I've said, just trying to wrap this up. We're wrapping this up. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Eliminating Caregiver Chaos podcast.